Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can rewrite an entire destiny. But José Daniel had no idea that a single $5 bill offered to a stranger would one day be the price of his own salvation. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. A tense voice filled the narrow aisles of a small pharmacy. "Officer, please, it's better if you take her," the shopkeeper snapped. "She needs to learn not to steal." The young woman stood frozen. Her eyes glistened with disbelief. "I didn't take anything," she pleaded. "I'm a student, not a thief." But no one listened. The officer sighed impatiently, the bystanders whispered, and in that moment the world had already judged her. Until José Daniel stepped forward. He wasn't wealthy, just another tired man stopping by to fill a prescription. But something about the girl's trembling voice pulled at him, the kind of fear that only the innocent carry. "How much does she owe you?" he asked quietly. The shopkeeper frowned. $5. Without hesitation, Jose reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled bill, and laid it on the counter. "There," he said. "Now it's settled." The shopkeeper hesitated. The officer blinked. For a brief, silent second, the whole world seemed to pause, as if it too was deciding whose side it was on. Finally, the officer sighed. "Let her go." The young woman's eyes met Jose's. Gratitude shimmered there, fragile but real. "Thank you," she whispered. He smiled softly, unaware that destiny had just taken note of what he'd done. Later that day, Jose returned to the pharmacy for his own medication. The same headache again. Sharp, relentless, like a storm behind his eyes. He didn't think much of it. Just stress, he told himself. Just another long day. But as he stepped out into the fading sunlight, he saw her again. The same girl, now standing outside the building, holding a small box of homemade cookies. "Excuse me," she said shyly. "I'm selling these to help pay for my university. Would you like to buy some?" Before he could answer, a guard shouted from inside. "Who let you in? You can't sell here!" The girl bowed her head, already turning away. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble." But José Daniel called out, his voice calm but firm. "Wait." He turned to the others. "If someone studies and works this hard to get ahead, the world should be on her side." The room went quiet. Even the guard hesitated. Then, one by one, people began to approach, buying cookies, not because they were hungry, but because kindness is contagious when someone dares to go first. As the girl packed up her now empty box, she smiled. "These are for you," she said, offering him a small bag, "to thank you for the medicine you paid for." He laughed softly. That was nothing. But she shook her head. It was everything. No one helps a stranger anymore. And as she walked away, her words echoed in his mind, because in a world that often forgets kindness, $5 had just become priceless. The next few weeks moved quietly, almost tenderly. Every morning, José Daniel passed by the same street, and every morning the girl with the cookie box was there. Her name was Alejandra. She'd smile even when people ignored her, thank them even when they refused to buy. And sometimes, when the sun hit her face just right, José would wonder how someone with so little could still shine so much. He began greeting her with a small wave, then a few coins, then a short conversation that somehow always left him smiling afterward. But not everyone saw what he saw. In the office, whispers began to spread. Paul, his coworker, his shadow, watched every move José made, twisting kindness into rumor. "Are you turning this place into a street market now?" Paul joked, loud enough for everyone to hear. José ignored him. "She's just trying to pay for her education," Paul sneered. "And you're just trying to be her hero?" José didn't respond. He just walked away, the kind of silence that burns louder than words. That afternoon, Alejandra appeared again at the company entrance, her smile a little unsure. She held her cookie box close to her chest like it carried her entire future. And maybe it did. When the guard moved to stop her, José's voice cut through the noise. "Let her in, I gave permission." Paul's face darkened. "You can't authorize that." José looked at him, calm but unshaken. "I just did." Minutes later, Alejandra stood in the center of the office, shy but proud, offering her cookies. And something beautiful happened. One by one, the staff began to buy. Even those who had rolled their eyes before were now smiling, joking, supporting. In less than 10 minutes, every cookie was gone. When José returned from the meeting, she ran to him with tears in her eyes. "I sold them all," she said breathlessly. He smiled, proud. "Good, you deserve it." She handed him a small packet. "These are for you, my thank you gift." He laughed softly. "You'll lose your profit." "It's not a loss," she said. "It's gratitude. You helped me when no one else did." Then her expression changed, worry creeping in. "Are you okay? You keep touching your head." "It's just a headache," he said, brushing it off. But she stepped closer, her eyes serious. "A headache doesn't make you look like that. My professor's a doctor. Please let her check you." He chuckled. "You worry too much. And you don't worry enough," she replied. He didn't know it yet, but she had just given him the first warning, the one that might have saved his life if he'd listened. As Alejandra left that evening, Paul watched from the hallway, eyes sharp and cold. "She's the reason you'll lose everything," he muttered. But José Daniel didn't care, because for the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. And for Alejandra, that small act of belief, that faith in humanity, would one day become the heartbeat behind a miracle. It's strange how quickly life can turn. One day you're the person who helps others, and the next you're the one who needs saving. For José Daniel, that day came quietly, without warning, without mercy. It started with a meeting. When he entered his office, Paul was already there, waiting, smiling the kind of smile that hides a knife. "I was told you wanted to see me," José said. Paul leaned back in the chair that wasn't his. "Not me," he said. "The board." He slid an envelope across the table. "By order of management, you're officially terminated." José blinked, confused. Terminated? For what reason? Paul's tone was smooth, almost rehearsed. "The company can't afford more mistakes. You've brought unauthorized vendors into the building. That girl, the cookie seller, she distracted the staff. It's all on camera." José's voice trembled, not from fear but disbelief. "I gave years to this place. I never missed a single deadline." Paul stood, his grin widening. "Fulfilled until you decided kindness was part of your job description." He walked past José, whispering just loud enough, "Maybe next time you'll think twice before playing the hero." The door shut. The office felt smaller, and for the first time in years, José felt truly alone. That night, the headache returned. Heavier, sharper, almost cruel. He sat on the edge of his bed, clutching his temples, praying it would fade. But it didn't. It pulsed behind his eyes like thunder trapped in a cage. Days later, he sat in a cold hospital waiting room, holding a folder that could end a life or save it, depending on what was inside. When the doctor returned, his face said everything. "Mr. José Daniel," he began carefully, "you have a brain aneurysm. It's in a very delicate area. We need to operate as soon as possible." José's heart dropped. "How much will it cost?" he asked. $35,000 to $40,000, the doctor replied softly, "depending on the specialist." He tried to laugh, the kind of laugh that breaks halfway through. "I just lost my job. I can't even afford rent." The doctor sighed. "We could apply for the public program, but the waiting list is long, and you don't have that kind of time." José nodded slowly. "So that's it." The doctor looked down. "I'm sorry." When José stepped outside, the air felt heavier than ever. He sat on a bench across the street, the city spinning around him. Horns, footsteps, life moving on without him. He whispered to no one, "I wish life would give me another chance." Somewhere in that same hospital, a young doctor flipped through the patient list for her shift. One name made her freeze. Her hands trembled as she whispered it out loud. "José Daniel." The world stopped for her too, because fate had just circled back, quietly, perfectly, to repay a $5 act of kindness that the universe had never forgotten. When Alejandra saw his name on the patient list, her heartbeat changed rhythm. It was as if the world suddenly reminded her. Some debts are not paid with money, but with mercy. She rushed to the emergency wing, scanning every bed until she saw him. Pale, motionless, eyes half open as if still trying to stay strong for a world that had already forgotten him. Her voice broke. "José Daniel?" He turned his head slowly. For a second, he thought he was dreaming. "Do you think my eyes would never see you again?" he whispered weakly. She smiled through tears. "I could never forget the man who once believed in me when no one else did." He tried to sit up, but the pain was unbearable. "I lost my job. I can't pay for the operation. Maybe it's better this way." Alejandra stepped closer, her voice steady but trembling underneath. "Don't you dare say that. You once told me that people who study and work hard deserve the world to be on their side. Now it's the world's turn to be on yours." He looked at her, his eyes glistening. "Alejandra, I'm not worth saving." She smiled softly. "Then let me decide that." Moments later, she burst into the surgical unit, speaking to her supervisor with a conviction that made even the walls listen. "Doctor, this man needs surgery now." "We can't," the senior physician replied. "He can't afford the cost." "I'll do it," she said. "I'll perform the operation myself, and I'll do it for free." The room fell silent. Her mentor frowned. "Alejandra, you're not thinking clearly. You could lose your license." "I'd rather lose my license," she said, "than lose the man who once saved my future." And that was the moment kindness completed its circle. From a $5 favor in a pharmacy to a surgery that could rewrite 2 lives. Hours later, the operating room was cold and still. The beeping of machines echoed like a fragile heartbeat of hope. "Scalpel," she said. Her hands didn't shake, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she had faith. Time dissolved. Every second was a battle. Every sound, the whisper of scissors, the hum of monitors, became a prayer, and then silence. "Doctor?" the nurse asked softly. Alejandra exhaled, the breath of a woman who had just fought fate itself. The operation was a success. When José Daniel woke up, he thought he was dreaming again. Soft light poured through the hospital window, and the first thing he saw was her, sitting beside him, still in her scrubs, eyes red from exhaustion. "You're safe now," she said. He blinked, his voice raspy. "Who paid for all this?" "You don't owe anything," she whispered, "because I was your surgeon." He froze. "You operated on me?" "Yes." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were made of peace. "You once gave me a second chance when I thought my future was over. Life gave me this one to give back to you." He tried to speak, but his words came out as a whisper. "The world really is fair after all." Alejandra smiled softly. "No, the world is just full of people who forget that kindness is its own reward." When José Daniel opened his eyes the second time, the world felt different. Colors seemed sharper, sounds clearer. Even the air felt alive, as if life itself was welcoming him back. Alejandra was sitting by his bedside again, head resting against her arm, fast asleep. The sunlight traced her face gently, catching the faint scars of exhaustion and courage. He watched her quietly, remembering the moment they first met. The trembling girl in the pharmacy, the $5 bill, the cookies she could barely sell. Back then, she had been the one asking for help. Now, she was the one who had saved his life. When she finally woke, her voice was soft, almost teasing. "You're staring," she said. He smiled weakly. "Just making sure this isn't heaven." She laughed, that kind of laugh that feels like forgiveness. "If it were heaven," she said, "you wouldn't still have to pay your medical bills." "I don't even know how to thank you," he whispered. Alejandra reached out and held his hand. "You already did, years ago. You believed in me when everyone else turned away. I just kept the promise the world owed you." He squeezed her hand gently, his eyes filling with quiet wonder. "I used to think I was cursed," he said. "I lost my job, my health, everything. But maybe life was just waiting to teach me gratitude." Alejandra smiled. "Sometimes life breaks us, just to rebuild us softer." They sat there in silence, not the heavy kind, but the peaceful one that speaks without words. Then the door opened. Paul stood there. The man who had fired him, the man who had mocked him. But this time, his arrogance was gone. He held a letter in his hand, his voice unsteady. "Jose," he said, "management reviewed your case. It turns out the decision to fire you was based on incomplete information. I've been dismissed instead." Jose stared at him quietly, the irony washing over the room. Paul looked down. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." Jose nodded slowly. "It's all right. Time always puts people where they belong." As Paul left, Alejandra leaned in. "You didn't even say you were angry." He smiled. "What for? Life already gave me justice." Weeks passed. The hospital room became brighter each day. His recovery was slow but steady, and Alejandra was always there, checking his pulse, bringing him food, teasing him about how stubborn he was with the nurses. Until one morning she walked in with a surprise, a small box tied with a red ribbon. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it," she said, smiling. Inside were a dozen homemade cookies, just like the ones from that day years ago, except this time the label read, "For the man who taught me what kindness means." Jose looked up, his eyes shining. "I thought I saved your future." Alejandra smiled, her voice trembling softly. "You did, and you saved mine again, just by surviving." He reached out, holding her hand between his. "Then maybe," he said, "this time it's my turn to make you a promise." "What promise?" she asked, half laughing, half holding her breath. "That I'll spend the rest of my life proving that kindness isn't weakness. It's strength." And so, the man who once thought his world had ended found that the greatest wealth isn't in success, but in the people whose hearts you touch along the way. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is a small act of kindness and the courage to believe that someday it might come back to save you too.